We have arrived at 2015's Furious 7, aka Fast and Furious 7, the movie that many people thought should have been the last one. You know, in the Furious 6 video, I discussed the whole Luke Skywalker quote from Last Jedi. No one's ever really gone because they keep bringing everybody back from the dead. Unfortunately, life can kind of mess with that because prior to this movie being completed, Paul Walker, who plays Brian O'Connor in the movie and has been the main character or a main character going all the way back to the first film, passed away in a tragic car accident. I remember it was shocking. And because of that, they were able to finish the movie with his brothers stepping in to play his parts and some clever editing and CGI technology. So this movie acts not only as the next chapter in the Fast franchise, but also as the farewell to Paul Walker. I want to first of all start this by saying that the idea behind Paul Walker, or Brian's character focusing on being a good father to his family, therefore leaving the life. I really like that story a lot. I really do like that. It was a good way to write him off. And the way they had to rewrite the script to kind of put that in here makes sense. I felt like it was good. I felt like that was an important part. However, I feel like had he not, in my opinion, had he not passed away, this would have been a very different movie, in my opinion. So, with that being said, the tribute at the end of the film when the character that Vin Diesel plays, Dominic Toretto's driving and he's thinking about all the memories from the previous movies, you know, that scene right there was really touching and really powerful and probably a complete tragedy for longtime Furious fans. I mean, I'm still kind of messed up over it because that was just a phenomenal freaking actor and an important character of this franchise. I don't even know how I'm gonna be able to go in there and watch 8, 9, and then later 10 without him being there because he is the co-main character alongside Dominic Toretto. So in this movie, not only is it Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, they're once again joined by The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He's back once again. Michelle Rodriguez plays Letty. Tyrese Gibson, Ludacris are back. We've also got Digimon Hauson as the villainous Mose Jakanda, who wants to find this magical object. It's not really magical, but it's a technological wonder called the God's Eye that will let you track anybody anywhere in the world because you can hack all camera systems. So that was cool. On top of that, the other villain, the one that's stalking the family, is Jason Statham playing Deckard Shaw. Obviously, in the mid-credit scene of Furious 6, we saw what happened to Han in Tokyo Drift. And in this movie, they elaborate on it in the first act. They actually cover the entire time Dominic goes to Japan and then, you know, does the race and meets up with, surprisingly, he had a cameo in this movie, Lucas Black, which, by the way, it is notable if you watch Tokyo Drift and then this one that he's aged. I mean, the first thing I saw when I saw Lucas Black on screen is that's not the same guy from Tokyo Drift. Obviously, the third movie happened a long time ago, but in the Fast timeline, it happened right around here. So like, and that doesn't make any sense because in this movie we see Letty's grave, and it says that she died in 2009, which is when Fast and Furious took place. So that would mean that Tokyo Drift has to take place after '09, and that makes no sense. That makes no sense because people in Tokyo Drift had flip phones. And you know Japan's way ahead of us with technology. There were iPhones around back then. In the 2000s, let's say this movie takes place in 2015 and Tokyo Drift is earlier in 2015. Everyone in 2015 had a smartphone. Maybe not me. Long story behind that. But everyone had one. Nobody had a flip phone. So there's little things like that that bug me about the timeline here. Also, I will say Gal Gadot and Sung Kang not being in this, they were definitely missed. They were missed. Right now, I must say that while I loved the Deckard Shaw character and I love that he wanted to get revenge for his brother, it also felt sort of like they could have done more with him. I thought that the character of Deckard Shaw was not what I was expecting at all, but I do like the idea of him hunting down the members to, you know, to kill them, to get revenge for what happened to his brother, who's not dead. Somehow he survived. Also, I thought that The Rock as Luke Hobbs didn't really do much in this movie. He has a pretty cool fight scene with Jason Statham, who, by the way, belongs in this franchise because if you've ever seen The Transporter 1, 2, and 3, it's basically The Transporter is the Fast movies except with one guy. You understand? And so he belongs here. Anybody who can do movies where you're racing and driving cars, they should be in these films. It's very fourth dimensional or third dimensional wall breaking because not only is Jason Statham as the transporter here. When he fights The Rock, he fights like the transporter. Like he has the same fighting style. Besides that, this movie introduces Kurt Russell as Mr. Nobody, another guy who's known to drive in a little movie called Death Proof, directed by Quentin Tarantino. So these guys all have history. Of course, Ronda Rousey's in this movie as well in a cameo. She's the head of security in Abu Dhabi. So this movie, man. So the Paul Walker stuff was very emotional. The crew was a lot smaller because Mia wasn't really there that much for this movie as much as she was in other ones. The scene where Letty got her memory back near the end was, that was a touching payoff to that storyline. They'd started in 6. Overall, though, I have to be honest, I was going into this movie with big expectations. Unlike the previous movies, this one's directed by James Wan, not Justin Lin. James Wan, of course, known primarily for booting up the Saw series and directing the first one, The Conjuring, and Insidious. Mostly known as a horror guy. After Furious 7, he would go on to direct Aquaman and the pretty soon to be released Aquaman 2. But this was his first kind of attempt at doing an action film. And he definitely brings a lot of the John Woo-ness, into this movie. But I have to say, I am a little bit disappointed. I'm not going to lie. As of right now, after seeing this movie, I will tell you that I still feel like Fast 5 is probably my favorite, followed by Furious 6. I think that Fast and Furious 6, the 5 I think had the best ending, I feel. Fast and Furious 6 had another decent ending. It wasn't the perfect one, but the fact they were allowed back in the US, and went back to their homes, that was cool. That was a good ending. Here, I think this movie, I feel, is a step down from both of them. While I enjoyed a lot of the characters here, they could have done more with them. The lack of Rock being around as much as in the previous 2 was kind of it kind of made me feel different, Also, like I mentioned, Jason Statham's character, cool character, but the thing about this movie that I must talk about is this is the movie where the transition between it being a street racing film to an over-the-top superhero storyline, this is where it starts. I feel like with Fast and Furious 4, 5, and 6, that's when the series started to sort of slowly distance itself from being about car racing and for car enthusiasts and become more of a heist crime film. Now, I enjoyed 5 and 6 because the heist was really cool. I think they had the best team in that one. And I felt like, to me, that was the peak of the series so far. Fast 5. That was the absolute peak. Everything in that movie did not waste time. Then in Furious 6, we had a lot of great moments too. And the finale was over the top. The runway was too long. There were crazy crashes. People survived. This movie takes it a little tiny bit too far because if you go back to the first Fast and Furious movie, when Toretto hits that freaking truck and flips and he's all injured, that's powerful. And then, of course, he gives him the car. He says, I owe you a 10-second car or whatever, 20-second car. Here in this movie, we're now beyond the point of any sense of believability. We've got a scene, two scenes, in fact, where there's 2 head-on collisions between vehicles, one driven by Deckard Shaw, and Dominic Toretto. It's early in the movie. We have a head-on collision, and somehow they're still alive. You realize that the head-on collision in this movie is the head-on collision in this movie. If you do that in real life, not only will you die, but your whole body will be destroyed. And so the issue is that earlier in this franchise, specifically with the first 3 movies, people cars were seen as being dangerous. thrilling but dangerous. Here, there's so many stunts. The scene where they did that long sequence where they were parachuting out of the plane, and then they were chasing, and then there was that scene. Decker was there, and like all these things were going on. They were trying to find Ramsey right in the jungle with the cars, and then when Dominic does the complete takes the car and then does the where he runs off the side of the cliff, and then it's rolling down and he survives. That's too much, man. Like it really did feel like this was too much. Like at this point, this series started off with these guys just being really skillful drivers. They have very good reflexes. Han, the drifter, they all had really good driving skills. In this movie, not only do they all have like impenetrable bodies and have superpowers, but they all know karate. Because it's one thing to know how to drive and then be tough. I was not expecting Tej Parker, Ludacris, to know Aikido the way he did it in this movie. Like, I don't recall in any of the previous movies him being a martial arts guy. He was always like the brains of the operation, and he was always a good driver. But he wasn't like the martial arts guy. And here he is being the karate guy. It was very, very strange. Obviously, Michelle Rodriguez, another character who was always tough. She was always a very tough character. Here she's having like very, I guess, complicated fighting sequences with Ronda Rousey. Very, very bizarre. Now, some of you are probably thinking, what I'm thinking. Like, yeah, when I first saw this movie, it was a bit over the top, maybe too over the top. And this is where the franchise is going to go from now on. From F7, F8, F9, F10, F10-2 or whatever, and Hobbs and Shaw, the stunts get bigger and more ridiculous. The things that people survive keep going and becoming very unrealistic for anyone. And it sort of becomes what John Wick 3 did, where John Wick can take punishment from anything and survive. I'm telling you right now, the human body can withstand a lot. But movies like John Wick and this one, obviously they're fiction. Don't be fooled, yo. Do not be fooled. The scene where Hobbs and Shaw are fighting, and then The Rock ends up going through the car after falling down like 5 stories, he would be dead. He was out of commission, but if that were real, he would not have survived, no matter how ripped The Rock is. So it's one of those things where you really, for this movie, have to turn off your sense of realism, have to disconnect any sense of, groundedness. That has to go out the window here. I want you to understand, I'm not saying that I'm against like these movies being over the top action spectacles. I'm not against that. You got to have your popcorn movies out there from time to time, but it's inconsistent with the laws of the universe, of the movie universe that they established in previous films. You understand what I'm saying? Like if I watch Infinity War, for example, I could see sequences like this in a movie like that, or like Captain America, Winter Soldier. There's a lot of that in this movie. I could see that, but these are superhumans. They're metahumans. This is where literally Dom Toretto becomes like a metahuman. And you could even say that him and Rock were just really tough in previous films. Here, he's just on a different level. And I felt like Fast 5 and maybe even Fast 6 to a degree, but really 5 kind of kept everything relatively grounded, even though they had a spectacular final sequence. Don't get me wrong. It still felt like it was more grounded than not. Whereas here, it almost in a way ruins tension. Like the scene where the double head-on collision happened, now I'm starting to wonder, okay, if a head-on collision won't kill these guys, then why am I worried about any of them? Why would I have any nervousness in my gut for them dying in other movies? See what I'm saying? So in many ways, I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but in many ways, this movie did jump the shark. So I can see people saying that this could be the last one, not just for the death of Paul Walker, but because it really did jump the shark. And logically speaking, there's not really much in this movie that really would interfere with the series ending. Like there was no really leftover, unresolved plot points. Han was dead. Unfortunately, Giselle is dead, and Paul Walker's character Brian is retired. Letty got her memory back. You know what I mean? Like if you're not gonna end it with Fast 5, which was a logical ending, I feel like this would have been the next ending. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I haven't seen 8, 9, or 10. It's not out yet. But I will be doing the reviews on those next. And I'll talk about those because I know those can kind of go over the top as well. I mean, we'll see what happens. But this one also had a lot more comedy too. I felt like the chemistry was a little bit better in this one. As usual, comedically, Tyrese as Roman Pierce, he's really like the big funny guy. I loved also the way this movie looked when they go to Abu Dhabi. I've loved and I've always wanted to go to the United Arab Emirates because it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country and beautiful cities, and we got to see it there. That sequence with Dom driving the car from one building to another, I've seen that before in the Transporter. We've seen these kinds of scenes before, but I feel like again, here we're getting to the point where where's the stakes and the drama if you know that none's gonna happen to him. You know what I mean? It's just that's how I felt about it. Overall, I feel like it is still a thumbs up movie. I think there's a lot of action in it, and it's a popcorn movie, but it's not one that I'm like dying to see. Whereas when I saw Fast Five, I saw it like 3 times in a week, dude, because I loved this so much. And Fast Six was also a lot of fun. This one was fun, but I felt the previous two connected stronger with me. We'll see where the series goes. However, this one's probably the most emotional only because of the real life passing of Paul Walker. So really it's going to be difficult to even count that as being a positive because it's a very negative thing that happened in the real world that affected the production of the movie. So either way, I thought it was a bit of a step down from the previous two. But nevertheless, I still liked it, and I look forward to see what happens in the next part of the series, man. I don't know how much more over the top I can get than what we've already gotten. It's more than just like crazy stunts and people like, doing incredible things. Now it's more like they're doing incredible things that make no sense, and not just that, they are now superheroes. It has become a superhero franchise. Crazy. I can't wait to eventually look back on all of these and see how they roll. What do you think? Let me know what you thought about Furious 7. I don't know what to say, man. It was good, lacking a bit, but still good. We will talk very soon.